Edward.
Hmm?
Privateering. Is it dangerous?
Wouldn't pay so nice if it weren't.
Why not sail with the King's Navy? Earn a proper wage, sail under gentlemen.
Sod the Navy's gentlemen. For every shilling I'd earn, the captain gets 600. That's no way to earn a fortune.
We don't need a fortune.
It's not about need, Caroline. I want food that don't make me sick. I want walls that hold back the wind. I want a decent life.
How long would you be gone with these privateers?
A year, I reckon. 2 at the most.
All right. No more than 2. Promise me.
In Assassin's Creed Black Flag, the introduction to Edward Kenway is one of the quickest and cleanest explanations of character motivation I've seen. While it does not provide us with a full explanation of what drives Kenway, it gives us our first glimpse into his character flaw and his internal want. Within 3 minutes of the opening, we know what our character wants: food that doesn't make him sick, and walls that keep out the wind. Here is a man who wants more. Not much more, but better than what he has. This is our hero's first stage. A little more comfort at the expense of his wife's desire for him to stay home. The storytellers make it clear that he has some money, some food, and he has Caroline's love. But this is not enough for the young Kenway. All it will take is 2 years, and not only will he be back with his wife, but their lives will be better than anything he could provide working a proper job. As storytellers, one of our primary goals is to get our audience to invest in our main character, and the storytellers for Black Flag give us 3. Edward Kenway is a competent fighter, engaging in battle at the game's opening. He has an empathetic want, that being that he wants to provide a better life for Caroline and himself. And finally, he is proactive in attaining this desire, as the story begins with him as a privateer in the year 1715. It is this early investment which causes us to stay by his side, supporting his endeavors even when they cause harm to others. Because the audience cares about Edward Kenway, the storytellers can get away with escalating his misdeeds. Kenway's story is, in some aspects, a tragedy, but then also a tale of redemption. It is a heartbreaking story around the golden age of piracy, a time in history where freedom and the opportunity for wealth were accessible to any man willing to take the risk. And, as romantic as that sounds, it reveals many of the darker qualities of greed and the misuse of an ideology. Through Kenway, we as viewers experience the poetic irony of wanting the wrong things for the right reasons, and how the endless pursuit for more causes the loss of everything you have. Before continuing, I want to make a brief remark about how the Black Flag story is told. It is one of my favorite stories, but as I went about preparing this essay, I realized that the story is told in a peculiar sort of way. I don't want to detract too much from focusing on Kenway's character, but the way the story is told affects how we as audience members experience his character arc. Hear me out if you are here to learn how to tell better stories. Or you can skip to the next bookmark if you're just here for the character analysis. A main character is how we as audience members experience a story, and our main goal as storytellers is to evoke an emotional connection between our audience and our story's hero, so that our audience wants to see our hero succeed and also grow as a person. Now, while Black Flag does accomplish this, the storytellers are simultaneously trying to tell the very loose history of piracy in the early 18th century. To do this, Black Flag does something I refer to as the Nick Carraway method, where the main character serves as a lens through which we experience the story, but the character themselves never particularly interacts with that story. The difference between Nick Carraway in The Great Gatsby and Edward Kenway in Black Flag is that Edward's does have a character arc, but it is postponed, for lack of a better term, for him to serve as our lens during the second golden age of piracy. I want to make it clear that I absolutely love this story, but it does feel a little disjointed at times because of the way Edward's story is told. First as a character capable of change, then as a lens, and then back to a character capable of change. I will indicate where these sections begin and end for clarity's sake, so that those among you looking to write better stories have a better understanding of the craft beneath the story. Now, where were we?
By God's grace, sir, you saved me. A profusion of thanks.
Is that yours?
It is my vessel, yes. But here lies its poor captain, and I have no art for sailing.
I can pilot her myself, no mind.
You don't mean to abscond with my ship, do you?
I'm Duncan. What's your name, friend?
Steed Bonnet.
Well, Mr. Bonnet, let this stay twixt us. But I'm on a secret errand for His Majesty the King, God save him, and I must get to Havana with speed.
Ah, that is a relief, sir. Havana is also my destination. Our ways lie together.
Natural allies, then.
You put me at ease, sir. To think I took you for a pirate when you first appeared.
Did you?
Yes. You have uncommon way of handling yourself. Quick and easy, if I may say. Gave me quite a fright. But all things considered, I think it's turned out to be a rather fortuitous day, hasn't it?
Upon meeting Steed Bonnet, there is a clear distinction between the two men. While we as audience members understand Edward Kenway to be a competent man who turned to privateering for quick wealth, Bonnet represents accumulated wealth through business and trade, a more traditional existence. The storytellers of Black Flag use Steed Bonnet as a character foil for Edward Kenway, showing us a successful man who is content with his life while also going about it in an admirable way. We see many admirable qualities about Bonnet, despite him having nothing in common with Edward Kenway. He was born into wealth as a landowner. He is a family man. He knows nothing of sailing or fighting, but his docile demeanor gives the impression that he enjoys his life, despite its lack of excitement. What draws him to Kenway is an admiration for the man's sense of freedom, an air of piracy about him. And this is how the storytellers really begin to develop depth to both Kenway and Bonnet, giving their viewers a better understanding of what drives the main character to act and change. Kenway is free of all responsibilities except to himself. He is liberated. He is capable and competent on his own. But the man is not content. However, truthfully, when we look at Bonnet, his wealth and finances and family, his relative safety in his job, he is not fully content either. Both men have something the other lacks. Kenway representing everything Bonnet wants, and Bonnet representing everything Kenway needs. This dynamic plays out through the course of the story at different stages of the men's lives, but in between encounters, Kenway and Bonnet go through certain stages of their character arcs, and the story presents one of its thematic questions regarding the cost of freedom, as well as the liberation of one's responsibilities. Can one really exist without the other?
God sink me for this pittance. 1,000 reals for those maps. That's what? £100 at most. How's a man supposed to become rich in these times with a miser like Torres running the world?
Have you ever worked on a plantation before?
You know what I'm thinking? I'd like to see this observatory the governor's going on about. He said it were like a device that could follow people around and show where they were.
A ludicrous idea. Imagine my wife with such an advantage over me.
And imagine what a thing like that'd be worth. Sell that to the right person and I'd be the richest privateer in the West Indies. I'll catch you up, Bonnet. There's a sage in that house I must speak to, in private.
Character motivation is relevant to all forms of good storytelling, regardless of the medium. As storytellers, something to keep in mind is a hero's want, keeping that want consistent, but allowing that desire to morph, grow, or expand. For Edward, we understand at story start that he wants a better home and better food, a better life for himself. But as the story progresses, Edward sees an opportunity, not just for a better life, not just for a little more gold, but to become the richest privateer in the world. There is a logical progression in Edward's want, and it ties in smoothly with the story's theme of greed. Bonnet remains a mirror for our main character, keeping the world in perspective, asking if Kenway has ever worked on a plantation, where slaves are worked day in and day out without pay. Where Kenway sees his lot in life as lacking, Bonnet is still very much a reminder that both men have plenty. But while they have freedom, it is not unlimited freedom like Kenway desires, and so his want for more than a decent wage inflates to a desire for a wealth greater than most other men. We as viewers understand that the hunger in him is growing, despite his internal need to be a better husband to his wife, remaining the same, remaining unchanged. But the deeper question then becomes why? Why does Edward's want for more continue to grow? If we believe him to want a better life for himself and Caroline, then why is Edward driven for so much more?
A despicable display. This Tosspot is a ruined man, Caroline. Unfit for life on land, much less at sea. If he goes to the West Indies, it's you who'll suffer.
Father! Father! Come, love. Up with you now.
That old muckworm! He's wrong about me!
I hope it's so.
You believe me, don't you? Can you not see me? Standing out there on the deck of a ship that's sliding into port. And there I am, a man of quality, with 1,000 doubloons spilling from my pockets, like drops of rain. I can see it.
Here we get a deeper understanding for Kenway's motivation, and it is done considerably well. The flashback is short, and it happens between scene changes so that it doesn't cause the story to lurch or slow down. We see that Kenway's true motivations are not strictly to do with money, but actually have to do with his place in society and how people see him. This adds a layer of heartbreak and irony to Edward's character when we consider the character's want and how they tend to get in the way of what that character needs. Edward's want, as it is initially presented, is to make enough money for a good, comfortable life for himself and Caroline. But to do this requires him leaving her for 2 years, essentially sacrificing love in order to provide a better life for the both of them. In the next level of Edward's evolution, we see that he wants society to see him as he sees himself, someone worthy and capable of wealth, power, and status. To do so, he must acquire substantial wealth, not for a more comfortable life, as we initially believe, but to prove those who doubted him wrong. This idea comes full circle with reference to Aesop's fable of the jackdaw, as we'll see later. But what we see now, what the storytellers show us about Kenway, is that he is sacrificing love for spite, giving up what he needs for a desire to show people that they were wrong about him. This, as we've previously talked about in other videos, is a character going about solving their internal problem the wrong way, digging themselves deeper into a hole because they are unwilling to look at their problem honestly and make the necessary and appropriate changes. Kenway, were he to take an honest job, one he views as peasant work, would still have the love of Caroline, even though he would not be admired, respected, or envied by most people. But rather than accepting a simple life, the storytellers feed into Kenway's hunger for power, a disparity he is keenly aware of, and an appetite even his comrades find laughable.
Now you'll want to sail somewhere rich with plunder.
Have you heard of a place called the Observatory?
Aye. It's an old legend, like El Dorado or the Fountain of Youth.
What have you heard?
It's meant to be a temple or a tomb, hiding a treasure of some kind.
That's it. See here.
Oh, rot. It's fairy stories you prefer to gold, is it?
It's worth more than gold, Thatch. 10,000 times above what we could pull off any Spanish ship.
Robbing the king to pay his porpoise is how we earn our keep here, lad. It ain't a fortune. It's a fantasy.
Sod it, yeah? I'm looking for a prize that'll set me up for life. I'll be king of the West Indies, then.
We came to Nassau to get away from the likes of kings.
Well, I'll be a man of property and promise anyway.
Jesus, let that dream go, lad. Nassau is the place to be, not England.
Do you ever dream of the big score? A ship so full of gold and silver, just split it and sail home.
Sure, but it's only a dream. Every man hopes to find a dozen chests of gold with no owners. They're as rare as an honest king.
Amongst pirates, schemers, dreamers, and friends, Kenway's want seems unobtainable, a fairy tale. There is an air of naivety about him because he's still looking for more, still hoping to be more than a pirate or thief. A little more respect and power than most are no longer enough, and the man has now set himself the goal of being a sort of king with riches and prestige. However, much like the doubt and mockery he faced in England, Edward faces a similar type of ridicule from his fellow founders of the Pirate Confederacy. This sets up Kenway's character as the epitome of piracy, the biggest dreamer amongst dreamers, in an age defined by wild schemes and huge risks. In many ways, Kenway is a symbol and embodiment of the pirate's ideology, liberation and freedom. But even on a personal level, we as audience members see what this unlimited freedom has already cost Kenway. The freedom to pursue anything has not allotted Kenway any peace, as his want to pursue more is unquenchable. We as viewers understand that Edward is a man with huge dreams and wild goals, but ignorant of the applications or repercussions of his actions. What is interesting is that Black Flag doesn't give Kenway a mirror character for this stage of his development. For the next length of the story, Kenway's high ambitions and lofty dreams are mirrored by the pirate city of Nassau, a town where freedom and personal sovereignty are held to the highest degree, an experiment in so-called democracy and the individual pursuit for all of one's desires. This pirate code is personified in Kenway. He wants to be rich and respected, but he solves this by taking on one of the most deplorable occupations in history, one that makes wealth off the misfortunes of others, one that garners no respect from most of society, the exact opposite of what he truly needs. This larger dream and desire mimic his initial want for better food and a better life for Caroline and himself. The irony is that he must give up his reality, the life that he had, in pursuit of the life that he wants, this dream.
Hey, where you going, the market?
No, My parents have asked me to come live with them, and I'd like to.
Oh, what do you mean, live with them? You live here with me.
I'm sorry, Edward, but my father is right. You had a decent wage when you worked the farm. Why can you not be satisfied with that? With me?
Decent wage? That job was near as, damn it, to robbery. You want to be married to a peasant the whole of your life?
All right, Edward. All right.
You leave now, Caroline. You'll never know what's coming to us. Caroline! Caroline!
Now, truly we have a full understanding of our hero. Not only is his goal to attain insurmountable wealth to prove his worth to those back home in Wales, but to prove to Caroline that his dream had value, that he had value. But again, this does not negate that Kenway knows the value of everything, but not the cost. His character is consistent in missing the key difference, and while his quest for gold and the observatory are what drive him forward, they are also what cause pain to those around him. And here's Edward's ironic dilemma. He has friends and had a loving wife, but his ambition for material things and status takes precedence. The pirate idea of self-indulgence, of unlimited freedom without purpose beyond oneself, is what tears the world apart around him.
Captain Kenway? Where is the assassin Duncan Walpole?
Dead and buried. After he tried to kill me.
We are not sorry to see him gone, but it was you who carried out his final betrayal. Why?
Money was my only aim.
Should I find comfort in that? You murdered our brothers and sisters in Havana.
He has the sense, Mentor.
James tells me you treated with the Templars there. Did you see the man they called the Sage?
Aye.
Would you recognize his face if you saw it again?
I reckon so.
I must be certain.
Kenway's story, the one which tail-ends the beginning and end of the Pirate Age, is driven exclusively by the man's unyielding greed combating his need to be a better person. He is a murderer, and has no remorse so long as the murders prove profitable. All the while, his promise to return home in 2 years goes forgotten. From a storytelling perspective, this previous scene is where Edward's character growth is paused, so that he can serve as a lens for the next length of the story. From here until the near end of the story, we experience the historical events of the Pirate Age and the lives of its most memorable characters through Edward's eyes. But the man himself remains relatively unchanged during this stretch of the story. What we witness through Kenway are the different perspectives and ideas which were romanticized and manifested during the Pirate Age.
Hey-o, Bonnet! Flying your own flag at last!
Yes, Blackbeard cut me loose, sadly. Time to have a go at this myself.
Well, that's grand.
Yes, it's for the best, I think. I should have some wild stories when next we meet. Edward, your constant friendship has been my most treasured find on these seas. Well above gold and silver and rum, I prize the courage you have inspired in me this year. Thank you, sir. A fair good morrow to you.
In his last appearance within the story, Stede Bonnet receives a happier goodbye than his real-life counterpart. But as the man sails away and says his farewells to Edward Kenway, the man who introduced him to piracy, he states that their friendship is his most valued treasure. For the sake of storytelling, let's assume we have seen all of Stede's character arc, an honest man who turns to piracy for a life of adventure and stories. but yet never loses sight of what is truly valuable: friendship. Using Bonnet as a character foil, we consider that Kenway could take this idea now, apply it to his own life, consider what he has in his friends and wife back home, and return to Wales with some gold, some stories, some adventures, and treasure his friendships. In fact, the opportunity to throw the life of piracy away without ramifications presents itself. But, like many pirates of the time, Kenway is unwilling to give up on a dying dream. What is presented instead actually provides the story with combating perspectives on the purpose of action, be it for a greater cause than oneself, or be it for recklessness and a life without regrets.
We should take the king's pardon and salvage what dignity we own.
Peace. I'll be hanged before I surrender to that bobbin.
Check your head, Vane. We had here a rare opportunity, a chance to take something base and shape it into a government made and maintained by men of vision. But in 2 years, we pissed it away. I won't make that mistake again.
While Kenway is not in this scene, let's remember that he is a lens for the events of the pirate age. What we are seeing through the perspectives of Hornigold and Vane were the two extremes to the king's pardon for piracy. Vane refused to surrender and take the king's pardon, wishing to die a pirate rather than submit to a docile existence. On the other hand, Hornigold makes a point on the squandered opportunity of Nassau. The life and dream of piracy, of Nassau, and the Confederacy of Pirates was a noble one in theory, but the men who led this revolution and democracy squandered the opportunity. Unlimited freedom without direction or values led many men to misspend their good fortunes and lives, making the point for Hornigold that higher ideals are lost on men like Captain Vane and Rackham. As previously stated, Kenway's character is, in many ways, an embodiment of Nassau, a man with lofty dreams and a fundamental belief in freedom. But the man still lacks the fortitude or direction to make anything worthy of his opportunity. Instead, Kenway values material wealth over ideals. Both the way of piracy and Edward's childish pursuit of the observatory are called into question in this scene, because while there is no argument that liberty is a worthwhile endeavor, and while there is no denying that the observatory is real in this context, there is an understandable amount of doubt that these dreams of wealth and power may not be causes worth dying for. While Kenway wastes his misguided efforts on finding the observatory, the potential of Nassau is wasted on men without the conviction to make the Confederacy anything of value.
This is what's left of your experiment in democracy.
Aye. We do as we please here and we take our time doing it.
For Christ's sake, Edward. Don't anything but the stink of riches wrinkle your nose.
What's got into you, man?
Reality, mate. Reality. See that you ain't pulled into the drink by this drowning rat.
Aye. I've lived longer than most men who trod this path.
After having foregone the king's pardon, Kenway is left with the shambles of Nassau. The dream that freedom, or doing as one pleases, is worth risking one's life. But James Kidd brings up two considerable points for Kenway. One reiterates his character flaw, and the other offers direction for a way out. The stink of riches, as Kenway has made quite clear, is almost exclusively what motivates him. Because of Edward's reluctance to let go of this fantasy, he is drunk on the Grand Inagua, with nothing around him but for other drunks and two loyal friends who often serve as his conscience. Kidd states that reality is what has caused him to see the failure of Nassau and the pirate code differently. And this is where we get a potent character foil, where Kenway is unwilling to see that the age of reckless piracy is coming to an end, Kit is coming to grips with that fact. The squalor in which Edward finds himself is directly related to his inability to let go of his dream of freedom, wealth, and the observatory, for no other purpose than to better himself at the cost of others. It rhymes with the same want and need Kenway begins the story with, pursuing his fantasy at the expense of others. It is this pursuit for wealth and riches that not only taints Kenway's view of the world, but also corrupts the quality of person that he is becoming.
Kenway! Here! In a world without gold, we might have been heroes!
As was the case with Stede Bonnet, Ed Thatch is used to demonstrate an idea, a consideration for Edward Kenway and us as audience members. Blackbeard is set for retirement, but does not live to see it. Instead, his death comes with a message. In a world without gold, we would have been heroes. So let's consider this, because Bonnet also leaves Kenway with a message, that friendship is the most valuable of treasures. And now Blackbeard dies, stating that gold corrupted who they might have otherwise been. During his phase as a lens character, Kenway receives the messages which will ultimately change him, but they do not take root. An early death is an understood risk for all those who live the pirate's code, and Edward is too stubborn to consider that there are more worthwhile ventures than the pursuit of riches and power. There is still in him the idea that unadulterated freedom and the pursuit of one's own desires supersedes all other restraints or callings the world might place upon him. Kenway does not change, but rather sinks deeper into the waters of his character flaw, pursuing selfish dreams at the expense of nobler goals, of living for gold at the cost of being a villain. But there is a cost to being a villain, a consequence which Kenway does not even recognize until nearer the story's final act. After the fall of Nassau and the death of Ed Thatch, Kenway retains his subscription to the Pirate's Code, that men can exist freely and democratically without anything going awry, and that lofty dreams can become a reality with enough conviction. But what Vane proves, and has stood for the entirety of his existence in the story, is a sense of reckless abandonment, killing when unnecessary, and looting when there are more important tasks at hand.
Fucking hell. Is this my reward for believing the best about men? For thinking that a bilge rat like you could muster up some fucking sense once in a while? Maybe Horner Gold was right. Maybe the world does need men of ambition to stop the likes of you from mucking it all up.
Or maybe you just don't have the stones to live with no regrets.
Considering supporting characters. While Bonnet was attracted to piracy for the adventure, and Thatch was attracted to its sense of freedom, Vane took this freedom to an extreme, drawn in by the glow of anarchy and a lack of accountability. It is this evil allure of power and liberty that Kenway finally acknowledges, accepting that it was a mistake to think higher ideals could change a man with selfish intentions. There is a further irony in the context of the story, because while Edward is living by the ideology and this self-important code of freedom, so are the Templars and Assassins. Vane is an example of how ideas are not necessarily flawed, but flawed individuals cause the misapplication of ideals. This is really one of the earliest points in the story where Edward begins to question, not so much his motives, but his beliefs, because not all men who share his philosophy, or any philosophy, hold it up to the same ethical standard. Vane's statement that Kenway simply doesn't know how to live without regrets hones in on this observation. Freedom, in the truest sense, a life without regrets, inhibits one's ability to grow and mature, something that has been quite obvious about Edward in his unwillingness to change. And while this would be a perfect transition for Kenway to at least consider that freedom with greater purpose is greater than absolute freedom without purpose beyond oneself, he still refuses the offer to fight for something more than his selfish dream.
So what now? Still chasing your elusive fortune?
Aye, and I'm close. I've heard the Sage is sailing out of Kingston on a ship called the Princess.
Put your ambition to better use, Kenway. Find the Sage with us.
I've no stomach for you and your mystics, Mary. I want a taste of the good life. An easy life.
No one honest has an easy life, Edward. And it's aching for one that causes the most pain.
This is not the first time James Kidd, aka Mary Read, has tried bringing Edward to his senses. While Addie often serves as Kenway's conscience, asking him questions as to why he is pursuing his fairy tale dream, Mary Read is the reminder that Kenway's dream is for nothing. Nassau was for nothing. The observatory is for nothing. To be the richest pirate in history is for nothing, because their function never extends beyond the individual, and because the individual, as Edward states, wants an easy life. But Mary, as Kenway's external voice of reason, his calling to his higher self, answers that no one honest has an easy life, insinuating that thieves and plunderers may have it easy by means of dishonesty, but that Kenway still has a chance, not to have more, but to be more.
Edward Kenway! Imagine my surprise at seeing your jackdaw anchored there. Have you heard all you came to hear? Will you now rescue the Sage from our clutching hands?
A pox on you, traitor! You sold us downriver.
Because I found a better path. The Templars know order, discipline, structure. But you never could fathom these subtleties. Goodbye, old friend. You were a soldier once, when you fought for something real. Something beyond yourself. Ah! You could have been a man who stood for something. But you've a killer's heart now. With nothing but metal to show for all your blunders.
Damn sight better than you, Ben. The heart of a traitor, who thinks himself better than his mates.
Aye, and proven true. What have you done since Nassau fell, huh? Nothing but murder and mayhem.
You threw in with the very kind we once hated!
No! These Templars are different. I wish you could see that. But if you continue on your present course, you'll find you're the only one walking it.
As Edward gets closer to his goal of reaching the observatory, stating he would bring the assassins to the location if they paid him, Hornigold's character plays on the idea that there are different types of sellouts, those bought by material, and those bought by philosophy. Hornigold's driving force for the story had always been one of moral superiority to the likes of Rackham and Vane, but he still shared in the ideas of liberty and freedom when balanced with order and dignity. It's easy to hate Hornigold for being a traitor, but it is difficult to hate him for his reasoning, as he is arguably one of the most balanced characters in the entire story. Whereas all other leaders of Nassau rejected the king's pardon in order to pursue their own selfish endeavors, Hornigold accepted it in order to pursue something that mattered more to him, the idea that men could live as free as possible with enough oversight. He admits to Kenway that he betrayed them, admits that he has changed, but Hornigold does not regret his actions. He understands what Kenway cannot, that the pursuit of gold, power, and freedom, with no goal beyond oneself, leads to a lonely life and death. In complete contrast to Vane, Hornigold does not exist to pursue a life without regrets, but rather to pursue a life with purpose. However, with the observatory within reach, Edward still cannot dispose of his selfish dream for the sake of something meaningful. It is not until everything has been gained, but every one has been lost, that Stede Bonnet's message finally seems to take root in some small corner of Edward Kenway's soul.
Mary, it's me, Edward.
Edward? Who's this fella?
It's all right, Anne. He's a friend. What's wrong with Mary?
She's ill.
And her child?
They took her. No idea where. Oh! Oh! Oh!
I know it pains, my lady, but we must be silent.
Can you walk?
Don't die on my account. Go.
This is such a pain in the ass. Damn it. You should have been the one to outlast me.
I've done my part. Will you?
If you came with me, I could. Mary.
I'll be with you, Kenway. I will.
With Mary dead, Edward is finally alone. Even Addie abandons him for a time. This is Edward's rock bottom. This is the place everyone has warned him he would show up. Alone, without a friend, and still unhappy having seen the observatory, but having nothing to show for it. As a quick note, this is also the phase of the story where Kenway ceases to be primarily a lens for the events of the Pirate Age, and we return to his character development. This transition is made by two means. One, there are no further tangential characters for Kenway to follow, and two, we as audience members are told the fable of the Jackdaw, the story which symbolizes Kenway's internal struggle for his external want, to be seen as something more than he is.
Once wrote of an eagle soaring high above a shepherd's field that swooped down on powerful wings to seize a grazing lamb and carry it off to... Flying close by, a jackdaw saw the deed, and it filled his head with the idea that he too was just as strong and capable. So, with a great flapping and rustling of feathers, the jackdaw came down swiftly and clutched at the coat of a large ram. But when he tried to fly away, he found he could not lift the animal, for his size and strength were not up to the task. And even as the jackdaw struggled, the ram hardly noticed he was there. Nearby, just across the field, the shepherd saw the fluttering bird and was quite amused. Running up, he captured the jackdaw and clipped its wings. That evening, he gave the jackdaw to his children as a gift. What an odd little bird this is, Father, they laughed and shouted. What do you call him? This is a jackdaw, the father said. But if you should ask him, he would claim to be.
Here, in Kenway, we have a man who imagined himself a great eagle, and, in trying to be something he was not, has had his wings clipped. Once Edward's character development starts to pick up again, we as viewers can start getting invested in him again. We can see that the death of his friend, Mary Reed, has caused him to seek a better path and a higher purpose for himself. While he has spent the entire story so far living his life in search of a dream in order to sell that dream to the highest bidder, he now is coming to terms with reality that his dreams are selfish, serve no higher purpose, and will leave him broken and alone at life's end. Once Kenway realizes he needs to change, he can finally start to see the damage he has caused from his years of carelessness.
Jesus, Addy, what the hell happened here?
You happened here, Edward. The damage you caused 6 years ago has not been undone.
I'm not an easy man to call a friend, am I? Is that why you're here?
To fight beside a man so driven by personal gain and glory is a hard thing, Edward. And I have come to feel the assassins and their creed a more honorable course. Have I been unfair?
No. For years I've been rushing around taking whatever I fancied, not giving a tinker's curse for those I hurt. And yet here I am, with riches and a reputation, feeling no wiser than when I left home. Yet when I turn around, look at the course I've run. There's not a man or woman that I love left standing beside me.
With all stories, why we as audience members care about a story has to do with our hero and how they change. Since Kenway serves as a lens for the middle of the story, he remains fairly static, and incremental changes would have served his character arc well after each lesson learned from Bonnet to Hornigold. That being said, while they were not incremental, the change that Edwards makes is an appropriate one, considering the course of the story. His greed has never led to the deaths of any of the main characters, but the lifestyle of piracy which they all led is what caused many of them to die needlessly. A pursuit for more, for better, for selfish gain is why nearly all of Kenway's friends are now dead. Once they have all gone, Kenway's conscience, Addy, calls him to a higher cause, to right the wrongs that his greed caused over 6 years earlier. Kenway, having now lost everything Bonnet warned him to treasure, having valued gold more than morals, as Thatch said, must live with regrets, having pursued a life with no purpose greater than himself. In order to make amends, Edward must undo the mistakes of his past by giving up the one thing he has spent the last 6 years searching for.
A merry life and a short one, as promised. How well I know myself. And what of you, Edward? Have you found the peace you seek?
I'm not aiming so high as that. For what's peace but a confusion between two wars?
Oh, you're a stoic then.
The killing of the sage Bartholomew Roberts by Edward Kenway is one of the more meaningful character actions in all of Black Flag. Kenway has spent 6 years pursuing the sage in order to locate and access the power of the observatory. Without Roberts, the observatory cannot be accessed, and therefore has no value to anyone until another sage is born. For Edward, killing Roberts is a decision to keep the power of the observatory safe, while also forgoing the ability to profit off the location's utility for those who might use it for evil causes. What we have here as storytellers is a hero who forgoes his want, Kenway's desire for power and wealth, in order to obtain his need for a life with greater purpose. But there is a bit of a catch. As stated at the beginning of this video, it is fine to have a story where a character's objective changes. Kenway evolves from wanting slightly more money and a better house to someone who wants more power and influence than most kings. The external want is something more readily observable and follows a logical ramping up as the story progresses. Likewise, a hero's need can change, not in its fundamental essence, but in how it is fulfilled. For Edward, the story starts with his need for contentment and to be a better, selfless husband for Caroline. Stage 1. Give up your dream for a better home in order to be a better man for your wife. This need to be a better person on someone else's account then re-emerges with the Assassin's Guild. Give up your selfish search for the observatory so that you can help the assassins keep it safe. Finally, with the observatory safe and all the friends who shared in his creed dead, what is Edward's final need? What internal role does he need to fulfill in order to be whole? And I personally feel that this, the handling of Edward's need, is what makes Assassin's Creed Black Flag so memorable and one of my favorite stories. Yes, the story does meander a lot so that we as audience members can experience the time period. Yes, Kenway's character development is waylaid in order for the viewer to go on a pirating adventure. Yes, by time Edward returns to the Assassin's Guild, I have forgotten that they were even relevant to the plot, and his character change is a little hard on the nose. But there is a saying that a great story with a bad ending is far worse than a bad story with a great ending. Frankly, with some very minor changes in Kenway's character shift, and some reminders here and there that the Assassin's Guild is suffering because of Kenway's negligence, this story would be rock solid. Assassin's Creed Black Flag is a good story with a great ending, and it is great because we put our focus back on the main character, his poor choices, their consequences, and Kenway's final decision to be better. In a nutshell, Edward's story, the real story that we as audience members care about and invest in, his personal growth and development is as follows. Kenway leaves his wife to pursue riches and fame, promising he will be back in 2 years. In his growing greed for more wealth and power, it takes Kenway 6 years to realize his true wealth is in the love of his wife and friends, in which time they have all died. Having realized this lesson too late, Kenway sends away for his daughter, who was born after his departure. Having failed to be a good husband, Edward is given a second chance to apply the lessons he has learned so that he may be a better man, a better father for his daughter. And while Assassin's Creed Black Flag has a little bit of a lag in the middle, this beautiful ending is the response to Bennett from all those years ago.
Edward! Your constant friendship has been my most treasured find on these seas. Well above gold and silver and rum, I prize the courage you have inspired in me this year. Thank you, sir. A fair good morrow to you.
Good night and joy be with you all.
You're a good man, Edward. And if you learn to keep settled in one place for more than a week, you'll make a fine father too.